All right, Thor, you ready to go? Welcome in, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Kendall Valenzuela, Thor Nystrom here with you on this Friday evening. Thank you so much for joining us, recapping everything that Thor has seen through the NFL Combine so far. Boots on the ground. Thor, how's it going?
It's going well. We do have boots on the ground, and tight end testing for the 40-yard dash is about to begin. So I'm excited to do
Okay.
this live reaction show with you.
Oh, I like it. I like the new era hat too, by the way. That looks wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wait a second. Where they didn't I mine must have gotten lost in the mail. That looks so nice, Thor. Oh my gosh.
yeah. I got everything. They New Era gave me everything. It's so sweet. I even got one of the things that they work out in with the Thor on the back. So I
What?
was thinking about donning that today, but I figured I'd give you the zip up hoodie. Go with comfort for the
Oh
show.
my gosh, that looks so nice. Thor, what would your 40 time be? If that's I mean, you can't dress like that and not give me, what your unofficial numbers would be.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in the threes, the 6.3s. I think is sort of the current consensus around here in
All
Indianapolis.
right. I like it. I like it. Well, like you said, we're watching closely. We've got everything on watching these tight ends and what they're about to do here with the 40-yard dash. But let's start off with a little bit of a recap here, Thor. Just kind of a little bit of a recap for the defensive linemen, the linebackers that really stood out. First one being Shamar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M. I'm curious what you saw from him because everything that I saw today, Thor, was biggest combine risers, right? You look at him, he had the second best 40-inch vertical among defensive linemen. He had a 10 foot 11 broad jump, which was the best among combine defensive linemen, 4.5940, which was the fourth fastest as well. So, what did you see from him today?
What didn't we see?
Yeah.
Shamar Stewart is absolutely ridiculous. The RAS system that Kentley Platt does, where he puts in your size, he puts in your athleticism, and then it spits out a score. Only one person at each position gets a 10. Shamar Stewart right now sits as the 10 for defensive ends, i.e., the most athletic performance we have ever seen at the NFL Combine. So that is where he sits right now. Now, it was interesting. He came in 14, 15 pounds lighter than we saw him at the Senior Bowl. Shamar Stewart dominated the first 2 days in Mobile and then opted out. He was a bit over 280 pounds in Mobile. He comes here and weighs in at 267. He obviously wanted to put on a show during the athletic testing, and he did that. But that just shows you that this guy has an absolutely enormous frame. We talked about how he has a nearly 7 foot wingspan, so he can go up and down in weight as it suits him. As you see here, this is like a UFC fighter cut the 15 pounds in 1 month. But yeah, the rangy frame there. This is a scheme versatile guy who is now, I think, punched his ticket into the top half of the first round. Some people here are even talking potential top 10. We'll end up seeing on that, but a tremendous showing from Shamar Stewart.
Like you said, 9.99 RAS score out of 10. Thor, can you, for anyone that maybe doesn't know, what the RAS score is and what it measures and what it means, can you just kind of break that down for everyone right now and just how impressive that is?
Yeah, it's Kenley's Platt system. Relative athletic score is what it's called. But yeah, he has the best out there right now as far as quantifying all these metrics, putting them together. There's a weight system on your height, your weight, your vertical, your broad, your 40, your 10-yard split, your 20-yard split, and then the two agility scores as well. And then sort of mash all the percentiles together and come up with a composite. And again, Shamar Stewart, you are talking about the loftiest of heights as far as what kind of an athlete that kid is in that kind of a frame heading into the NFL.
And it feels like he did, like you said, more than enough. We just went through all of his numbers. I did see that he tweaked his hamstring running the 40. That was per NFL Network senior national reporter Stacey Dales. But, when people look at that and say, oh, well, maybe we should have seen more of his agility, maybe his change of direction skills. I mean, Thor, it feels like he did everything he needed to do. So now that we're not necessarily seeing that, he still just really showed out.
If I was Shamar Stewart's agent, we're shutting down the pre-draft process now. We have shown enough to get into the top half of the first round. That's it. Yeah, a hamstring or not, he didn't have to do any of the other testing. He has proven it. So yeah, huge weeks for Shamar Stewart.
I love that. All right, let's go over to another one here. A guy that really stood out is James Pierce, edge out of Tennessee here. So, Thor, I know we've talked about him a little bit back and forth as well, but he impressed, right? 4.47, 40, 245, 245 pounds, I should say. That was on Thursday. And he looked smooth in everything that I saw. What were your takeaways from him?
Yeah, he sure did. And he ran that 4.47 at 245 pounds in a hoodie.
That's
in a
crazy.
hoodie. I have never seen a dude run of the 40 in a hoodie before, and James Pierce did it and flew. Like I said, 447, 245 pounds. This is an incredible speed rusher. I mean, he has one pitch, he has one trick, and it is real cool. Now, he's thin, and he does not have a diverse pass rushing repertoire, and that's why there are some concerns about him. This guy is not going to hold up the edge against the run, and it's a one-trick pony type edge rusher. However, like I said, you're talking about 105-mile-per-hour fastball. As far as his speed rush off the edge, it is really, really difficult to contain that first step explosion with that speed. He's a threat to take the outside shoulder all the time. So you almost have to sit back on it. You know, to think about a hitter going up against a guy that throws over 100 miles per hour, where you have to sit back in the batter's box. So if we can teach James Pierce some more pass rush moves in the NFL, you already have people sitting back on the one. Can we get a spin move off of it? Can we start doing the long arm stuff? Can we get more, again, more diversity of that pass rushing repertoire? But James Pierce, his stock had started to fall from the fall and then into this process. He did a really good job here with his athletic testing of reversing the narrative on that. I see a first round pick here. This kid looks a lot like Brian Burns to me. This would be a first round pick for me, but yeah, we'll end up seeing on that.
That's what I was just going to ask you. As I saw all the Brian Burns comparisons today after he did all that, which is understandable because he did best that 2019 first round picks in Brian Burns 40 time from the 2019 combine. So that's kind of why everyone's saying it. What did you see from his? You know, I've seen a little bit of talk about below average arm length, lack of explosion in the vertical jump here. Are those pretty noteworthy to you for him, or are you kind of like, don't worry about that as much?
No, I mean, to me, the vertical seems like a bit of an aberration. I have to imagine during pre-draft testing, he was jumping better than that, 43rd percentile vertical, but a 92nd percentile broad. And again, the explosion on the field is not a question. So I do not care about the vertical. What I care about, if I'm the team that is drafting James Pierce, again, we got to get him in there and start teaching him more pass rushing moves, then have that plan going in, and then the quick going through them, right? One plan gets shut down, you go to the second, you go to the third.
Let's go over to another guy here and talk about the recap for Danny Stutzman, linebacker out of Oklahoma. Thor, same thing. We're talking about guys that really stood out. So what did you see from him, boots on the ground, since you're there? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, this one made me smile because I think Danny Stutzman is a really good football player. He's a bit unorthodox, and we had, the draft media, we had sort of a theory that Danny Stutzman was not a very good athlete, and he dispelled all of that with he has a 9.71 RAS right now, unofficially 97 percentile size adjusted athlete. Came in here 6'3" and a quarter, 233 pounds, but ran the 4.52 with Danny Stutzman, 96th percentile. 97th percentile 10-yard split, 90th percentile 20-yard split. He did the vertical that not quite as good, 66th percentile, but again, you put everything together. This is a good sized linebacker who clearly has the speed as he showed out there, and the tape speaks for itself with Danny Stutzman. That big time stock up for Danny Stutzman, because when guys come in, for instance, Aman Wari today from South Carolina, and he blew the roof off of Lucas Oil Stadium, but we knew that he was a stud athlete, right? Like the guys where the stock goes up, it's where we have the supposition that maybe they aren't. Maybe we think that he's an above average athlete, and then he comes out and he runs like Danny Stutzman did when the tape is already there. And now he has answered the question about the athletic profile as well. This is a guy mid rounds, I would say, but I think he's got a shot at round 3. The sort of second, third, fourth tier of the linebacker class has not truly been sorted through yet. This was a really nice step in the right direction for Danny Stutzman. Again, the tape speaks for itself. The athletic profile checking that box. Very good news for Danny Stutzman.
I was going to say, because I remember you saying like he was coming off a pretty stellar senior season as well. You looked at it, 109 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 2024. So you pair that with his career stats, and I was kind of happy to see his name after you had been talking about him a little bit.
Yeah, Danny Stutzman, he's a tackle machine. It's like they used to call Brooks Robinson, he's like a Hoover vacuum. I mean, that's Danny Stutzman as far as the run defense goes. The issue with Danny Stutzman in coverage, and that's why he's not a good cover man, and I think that's why we had the supposition about his athleticism. It's a different player when he's playing the run as opposed to some of the pass stuff. This is a guy who has to be hidden in a zone system on passing downs. If nothing else, he is going to be a good early down linebacker, one of the best run defense linebackers we had in college football the last couple of years. Oklahoma's defense was really, really good this year. Wasn't a great team, but the defense was really good in large part because of Danny Stutzman. And if you know, a lot of times, kind of, we talk about like stats and we talk about some of these analytics metrics that we have from an event like this with the athletic testing. If I'm going to talk about a different stat now, if you look at Oklahoma's defense over the last 3 years, if you split it by times Danny Stutzman was on the field and when Danny Stutzman was not on the field, there is a gulf between those two things. It is telling when a player, when he steps on the field, you get a different defense as to when he is not on it. I saw that with Oklahoma's defense the last 3 years. So did Sooner fans. And I think he's going to bring value to the NFL. The coverage thing, I don't think you're ever getting around that. He's not comfortable with his back to the quarterback in space. He's just not. But again, the run defense thing, you have utility there. You can play him on special teams as well. And we'll see. Get him into zone coverage and hide him as far as that goes.
Out of these three, so we just talked about Shamar Stewart, we talked about James Pearson, we just finished up talking about Danny Stutzman. Who did you like the most? Who do you think stock rose? Who was the biggest standout from that first day?
In terms of take-home cash, it's Mr. Shamar Stewart, a guy who came into this process. I mean, he was, considered sort of top half of the second round. The question with Shamar Stewart, it was the sack production over his career. I believe he only had 4.5 career sacks, right? But we knew that he was a freak athlete. He was a 5-star recruit. He came in to Texas A&M in the best defensive line class that college football has ever seen. Jimbo Fisher just signed this ludicrous defensive line class. Walter Nolan was one of those guys as well. Shamar Stewart was a part of that. Nick Scorton, who is not a part of that, but transferred in from Purdue. It was like he came in and then Walter Nolan went out for Ole Miss, so they sort of swapped those guys. But he was telling us at his podium session that the scheme that Texas A&M runs, it is not as advantageous for the edge rushers as far as pinning your ears back and getting after the quarterback. They were asked to do more stay within their lanes kind of a thing and keep gap integrity and those sorts of things, keep containment of, when they played Alabama and some of the teams with the dual threat quarterbacks, keeping them penned into the pocket. So those things might have affected the sack numbers. Shamar Stewart, his pressure rate was always there. I think he was number 15 in the FBS last year, just in terms of pressures from the edge position. So this is a guy who is able to turn up the heat on the quarterback and maybe play, he goes to the NFL. Now you're in a different scheme. Now you're getting NFL coaching. And maybe you find your destiny as far as the position. I mean, one thing with Shamar Stewart is like for coaches, it's like you're in the toy shop with him, because it's like, oh, he could be a 3-4 edge. We can move on onto the interior on pass rushing downs. Like we can do all these different things with him because the physical package is nearly unprecedented in the history of the NFL, as we were just discussing with the athletic testing. So it would definitely be him going from where he came at the start of the process, dominating the Senior Bowl, and then coming here and dominating in the athletic test. That's a guy who now, again, he has moved up essentially a full round. Now you're going in the top half of the first round. Where does the thing end on that? It's going to be hard for teams to turn down that physical package.
And again, as everyone can see, Thor is live at the Combine, so make sure you're giving him a follow at ThorKU over there on Twitter, on X. I see a couple, skulls in the chat, Thor, where they're just like, "I'm just here for you to talk about JJ McCarthy." I feel like, it's fine. We can talk him a little later.
we can always talk about JJ McCarthy, as you know, and man, I got a lot of intel here. We're not going to have time to get into everything now, but I have a lot of information, a lot of different birdies are down here talking. Like so yeah, it's getting interesting down here. Things are really turning up. People out there, we talk about the athletic testing, we talk about the things that we learn at the podium session, all that sort of stuff. For the NFL, that world behind the curtains, the teams, the agents, the players, the biggest thing for them, it's the meetings here. Some would probably say medicals as well. That's something that's behind a black curtain for us as well. But all the meetings that are going on, which set the framework not only for this draft process, but first and foremost, free agency and the trade market. And are we going to tag and trade to the point of my Skull brothers out there? So yeah, a lot of different stuff is going on right now.
Well, let's talk about that then, and kind of like get into this mindset of the tight ends that are not participating. We're focusing on the tight ends today. We're going to be live throughout the whole weekend, but that's one where we're watching TV right now. We see that the 40-yard dash is about to begin as well. But let's start off with Tyler Warren, who we kind of knew coming into it. He was one of the latest guys to say, I'm opting out of participating in the on-field drills at the scouting combine. Obviously, he's not going to work out in Indy this week, but we've seen that I believe last I saw, took 12 interviews on the day from 12 different teams. So what does that mean for you with Tyler Warren, not doing the on-field drills? And do you think that's going to ding him at all?
Irrelevant, and more power to you, pal.
There you
were
go.
you were sitting in pole position for T1. It would have been if his agent allowed him to test. It would have been bad advice, right? I mean, when you're sitting in pole position at a position, it is incumbent upon you to. You don't need to go out and do that. Tyler Warren's tape, it speaks for itself. The athleticism speaks for itself. If the tide went against him and Colson Loveland, all of a sudden, like you can go out and you can do more stuff at your pro day. But for me, Tyler Warren, he doesn't even need to test at his pro day. I hope he does, but he definitely doesn't need to. He came in here 6'5.5". 256 pounds, wasn't too far off, where we thought, around the 6'5" to 260. The arms and the wingspan a little bit on the shorter side, but that's just nitpicking. The receiving and then the different stuff that you could do with him, the things that we saw on the field. It was so fun. Penn State having a creative offensive coordinator in 2024. It was a treat. And using a guy like Tyler Warren, like Andy Kotelnicki did, he realized the weapon that he had, shifting him into the backfield, the handoff stuff, the trick play stuff, and then just the different stuff you can do with him as a receiver. You can even line that kid up out wide in the slot. He can certainly handle inline. He's not the greatest blocker ever. The lack of length is in part with that. I don't care. That kid, all he does is advance the football. So he's going to be the first tight end off the board. And I think we're going to have two tight ends off the board this year pretty quick.
Wow. And you had him mocked as the Indianapolis Colts, right? You still kind of staying there for now?
I don't know if Tyler Warren ends up getting there.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is where the train stop ends, right, for him. I cannot see Tyler Warren falling deeper than that, and certainly Indianapolis, that has already come out and explicitly stated the one position they for sure will upgrade this offseason is tight end. They're telegraphing this to all of us. They would certainly love that. I think they would love if Colson Loveland fell to them. I think they would take either one of them. But Tyler Warren, he could start going anywhere outside of the top 6 in terms of value, right? Like in terms of where we're going to have him on the board and stuff like that. You get into the position need and stuff like that. So maybe he doesn't end up going quite that high. But yeah, I think it ends with the Colts and we'll see how high he ends up getting.
We love that. We love that for fantasy. We love the high praise over there for Tyler Warren. So do not worry if you're not seeing him. Thor is just like shaking it off. He's like, it's totally fine. Same thing with let's talk Colson Loveland then, because it's the same kind of situation here, Thor, where I could ask you, does this mean anything to you? But I know that your answer is going to be no, not participating due to injury. It's that shoulder injury that he dealt with for most of the 2024 season. But let's talk about, your pre-draft process, what you've seen from him and what you really like from Colson Loveland.
Yeah, he's still at his arm and kind of like a half sling, but he's going to be fine. Obviously, he's not out here testing. He's going to remind you a lot of Mark Andrews when you watch his film. Mark Andrews coming out of Oklahoma. Mark Andrews fell in his draft, and I didn't really get why. Colson Loveland will not be falling. Colson Loveland is going to go around where Mark Andrews should have gone in his class. Colson Loveland came in great size, nearly 6'6", 6'5 3/4". 248 pounds, enormous hands. He has 10-inch hands. And again, we've seen the kid's tape, and Kendall, no one has watched Colson Loveland's 2023 tape more than this guy.
Yeah.
We have a lot of exposure on Colson Loveland. Played a lot of slot in college. Michigan also in the Harbaugh offense. They also played him 32% inline and even 18% out wide. So Colson Loveland, he is the most skilled pure receiver in this tight end class. He's just so smooth. The ball skills are so smooth. The route running is so smooth. He's one of those guys that converts from the receiver to the runner. It's nothing. It's just so fluid, right? And that's the way it is with Colson Loveland. He's going to be a top 20 pick. I mentioned before that Warren, that it stops for him with the Colts. That's the last stop at the station. The last one for Colson Loveland is the team that came out and said we need the Joker. And Colson Loveland, he is the Joker of this class. So that's the guy that you would point to. Colson Loveland would be a great fit with the Broncos. I don't think Sean Payton is going to allow him to get 2 spots later to Jim Harbaugh, Colson Loveland's collegiate coach. So that's, can Colson Loveland get any higher? I think that will in part be informed by how high Tyler Warren goes, right? If Tyler Warren ends up going higher than the Colts, I mean, to me, that is what Colson Loveland is rooting for, because then we're going to Indianapolis. We're going right where I am right now.
I love it. And like you said, I mean, he caught 117 passes, 1,466 yards, 11 touchdowns over the last 3 seasons. And I've regularly seen the Denver Broncos. It's like, it's almost like, feels like the worst kept secret, but that just feels like a fit that could really work with Colston Loveland there. So out of those two, like, and you've had high praise for these guys for a long, long time. So what's Colston Loveland's comp for you?
Colson Loveland is Mark Andrews. Like that one, right. To me, that one is Spider-Man gift. The one I have for Warren, it's more difficult. I have Jeremy Shockey right now, but there are like the elements of what you can do with him as far as the running and the again, the trick play utility that Tyler Warren has, which is ridiculous. Some of that more evokes like a Brock Bowers, but he's way bigger than Brock Bowers. So maybe sort of a mashup of those 2 guys. Again, Tyler Warren is enormous. That's at 6'5.5" and 256 pounds. But I think Shockey most evokes him in terms of frame, athleticism, and then the receiving game.
Got it. And appreciate everyone leaving comments in the chat. People asking, if you're going to, be going to dinner after this. Thor at the Combine is like a kid at Disneyland. I agree. Yeah. Look at the smile on his face. He's just as happy as could be. And he's got his new era gear on. So he's ready to go, folks. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today. Let's go over to Elijah Arroyo, someone that we talked about going into the Senior Bowl, tight end out of Miami, 6'5", 250, not participating in the Combine due to his knee injury. But he did tell you that he was going to be participating at his pro day on March 24th. So just overall takeaways from Elijah Arroyo and what you've seen.
Well, after we saw him at the Senior Bowl and how well he moves around, we of course wanted to see him out testing, expecting Elijah Arroyo to put on a show. But he did have the knee thing, like you mentioned. So you put that off a little bit. And for people out there, it's not just like, we're necessarily, I'm not talking specific to Arroyo's situation, but sometimes it's not that they're injured right this second. It's that they weren't recovered enough to begin their pre-draft training until, let's say, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I've talked to numerous agents down here that were in sort of this predicament with their guys. The prospects need long enough to do the pre-draft training. Back in the day, they didn't do this, and then the prospects started realizing if we just train to run we get out on the track with our shorts, if we go with a coach that can teach us how to be more efficient with the 3-cone and our turns and stuff like that, we can cut down the times. We'll go higher in the draft. So a part of it is just getting that training in, and I think that's what Arroyo is looking for. As far as the measurements, this kid, he checked every box at the Senior Bowl that we had, which was the winning downfield, showing that athleticism, and then showing that he is a red zone threat. We got to see that at Miami. We were wondering a little bit, why didn't Cam Ward use him a little bit more? Miami had so many weapons. They had 3 NFL receivers that I talked to today on the other side of that curtain right there. And then you had Damian Martinez as well. Of course, you could go on and on and on. Why didn't he get more targets? But he showed the receiving utility. The stuff we saw in flashes during the season, we saw that all week in Mobile. Then he comes here a hair over 6'5", 250 pounds. You're above threshold size, of course, for a tight end. And not only that, he also has the 10-inch meat cleaver type tight end hands. And I believe the third biggest wingspan of the tight ends, but the longest wingspan of the tight ends that are at the top of the top 12 or so tight ends. So the physical package is all there. There will be a lot of people tuning into his pro day in Coral Gables, expecting that kid to move real well for a guy that size. And we'll have to wait till then.
I love him as a prospect too, because it feels like injuries kind of held back that development that you just talked about, but it feels like he has a ton of upside no matter where he goes. Do you think Thor top 5 for him? Is he a top 5 tight end off the board when it comes to draft night?
I think probably like right now he's tight end 6 on my board. I imagine the NFL will have him as a top 5 tight end. It's one of those guys that can easily stretch the seam and make plays downfield out of the slot. And at that size, that is obviously super valuable. And then again, the thing he did get to show at Miami was being that red zone threat. I love the way that kid uses his body, the body positioning, the body control, and then he can go up and get it. So, we saw that the back of the end zone, guys tossing it up to him. If you're one-on-one, it's just really difficult. A guy with a wingspan that big, the 6'5" frame, and he'll pin you behind his back as well. So yeah, I'm excited about Elijah Arroyo. His next level potential as a receiver and fantasy player should be too.
Oh, I like it. All right, let's go through the last guy here not participating in the combine drills. That's Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. If the name sounds familiar, yes, it is Jason Taylor, NFL Hall of Famer, I should say, Jason Taylor's son. So I know we've talked about him a little bit here, but were you kind of expecting him to not be doing any of these drills today?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that he needed to. We saw him down at the Senior Bowl. He also had a good week down in Mobile, and interestingly, he measured in at almost the exact same dimensions as Elijah Arroyo down here. They're the exact same height and only a pound off of each other. Mason Taylor also has the 10-inch meat cleaver hands for the tight end position. A little bit smaller wingspan. Mason Taylor, though, he's not going to be as good of an athlete as Elijah Arroyo, I don't think, but he is very, very smooth. He also has that Colson Loveland thing of the catch in the intermediate and immediately transition to be the runner. I like the timing that he works with, very precise routes. He was mentioning at his podium session, Mason Taylor, about how he grew up around the Miami Dolphins. Of course, you're mentioning his dad, Jason Taylor, and then his uncle is Zach Thomas. So this is a child of Miami Dolphins royalty. And it's one of those things where, you're a kid of a player, you're around the team. This guy knows how to run routes. He already sort of has a disposition of a professional. This guy's going to start in the NFL for a very, very long time.
All right, let's go over to the tight ends that are participating and guys that we can talk about, guys that are running right now. We are watching that as it goes on live, but let's talk about Harold Fannon, tight end out of Bowling Green. Before we do have a video to play because you got to talk to him a little bit.
Fantasy Lives, Thor Nystrom here with Bowling Green. Should we say tight end Harold Fannon Jr. or should we say offensive weapon? What do you prefer?
I like the second one, man. I like that a lot. But just for right now, I'll just say tight end.
Harold Fannon Jr., a player that lines up everywhere and catches every dang ball that is thrown his way. What are you trying to do this week to prove to NFL evaluators that maybe they haven't already seen on your film, an aspect of your game?
I'll say blocking, obviously run blocking. I feel like, catching a lot of passes is nice, but they want to see if I'm able to do the dirty work, and that's what I came in to do, just do the dirty work.
You're obviously coming off the most prolific receiving season in FBS history, and now you're coming here. Through the first 2 days, how would you self-assess your performance so far here at the Senior Bowl?
I'll say first, my first day here, obviously was a little nervous, all new to this, but as today, I feel way more comfortable with everything.
Who, you think about your game going to the next level. Who do you pattern your game after, or who would you compare your game to that's in the NFL right now?
Right now, I say Isaiah Likely.
I like that. Yeah. Harold Fannon Jr., a staple of action over the last couple of years. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Yeah.
I loved that, Thor. That was a nice interview. I'm rooting for Harold Fannon Jr. because right now, especially when we look at Dwayne McFarland's rookie supermodel, and that's something that we can talk about here in a little bit, but #1 adjusted production score in the history of his supermodel. That's over the likes of Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. That makes us pay attention for fantasy football. And he just seems like he's just this pure offensive weapon. What have you seen from Harold Fannon Jr. so far?
Yeah, it's the offensive weapon thing. He's not going to be an inline tight end for you. So he's not your traditional tight end at all, but you can line him up in the slot. He's another dude that you can line up out wide. You can shift him into the backfield. Bowling Green was doing Brock Bowers stuff with Harold Fannon Jr. as well. Now that's a guy that is more equivalent in size than the dude we were talking about before with Tyler Warren. But Harold Fannon Jr. is just a guy that you get the ball. You just manufacture the touches for him. He's going to advance the ball for you. That's just what he does. The quarterback play, by the way, Fannon, he's one of those guys that the receiving tape, it absolutely speaks for itself. He shattered every FBS record single season for a tight end this past season. People don't realize the quarterback play there was not good. Harold Fannon was the entire offense there. He had 150 targets in 2024. So they're just pounding him with targets. Only 60% of those targets were charted as catchable. And Harold Fannon Jr. had 117 catches. You can do the math at home. Pretty impressive. And he turned that into 1,555 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. And it's a guy who had, by the way, I mentioned the manufactured touches, but he did have a higher ADOT than Tyler Warren, than Colson Loveland, a couple of those other guys, Gunnar Helm, etc. You get the questions with him coming up from the MAC. Of course, you're going to get the level of competition thing. And Harold Fannon Jr., he has faced those questions. And then in conjunction with the size, he did come in to Indianapolis 10 pounds heavier than we saw him in Mobile. And that's what he is testing at today. But as far as the level of competition stuff, this is a kid who licked a couple really good teams. Just this past season, Texas A&M and Penn State, both obviously have awesome defenses. Harold Fannon Jr. destroyed them. Neither of those teams had someone to cover Harold Fannon Jr. I'm not sure that the NFL completely will either. Harold Fannon Jr., though, at Bowling Green, again, it was just forcing the ball. I think you're going to be going into a better situation in the NFL as Harold Fannon Jr. as the third or fourth receiving option that is out on the field. He's never going to be the top dude, of course. And because of that, you're not going to be able to roll any coverage resources to him. And it's a guy who you shift them around. The defense has to tell you whether they're in zone or they're in man. And if they're in man, you can get that guy isolated against the worst cover guy on the other. So you can get him against a slow-footed linebacker, you can get him against a strong safety. Harold Fannon's going to beat that dude, and then he's a problem with the ball in his hands after the catch as well.
I just saw him on screen. We saw him run the 40. It looks like I believe 4.73 unofficial and is what is coming in for him. I also saw them comparing his numbers to Julius Thomas, Broncos legend, over there on the screen as well. So I'm excited. This is one that I'm really excited for because even when you talked about the Senior Bowl, he had the fourth highest max speed of any tight end out of, I believe you said 2018. So he is probably a lock for fantasy football if we're talking about it to get a lot more expensive, especially after today. That's someone that a lot of people, Thor, are just circling and saying, I want to get him.
Yeah, I know Harold Fannon is going to be disappointed. At his podium session, he said he wanted to be in the 4.6s, and it looks like he just came in above that. But that's fine. I mean, you're right around there. And again, like the kid gets open, and by the way, he doesn't drop the ball either. I mean, it's one of the reasons, like, you're almost like Bowling Green. Like, can you go to someone else so the defense doesn't know literally what's coming every single time? But the kid doesn't drop the ball either. He just had a minuscule career drop rate. So it was 3 drops last year over those 150 targets, but less than a 5% drop rate over his career. Really, really good football player. As long as you don't stretch him outside of his means, and I don't think they will in the NFL. I think they'll use him correctly and intelligently.
Let's go over to Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas. I see the question being, stock down, or is he injured, Thor? Because I'm looking through all the combine stats. I see second to last in the 40-yard dash. I see his vertical was last among tight ends. Broad jump, he did not participate. So what is your takeaway? What have your takeaways been so far with Gunnar Helm?
I'm surprised that Gunnar Helm tested. And especially after seeing these numbers. Gunnar Helm told us at his podium, we asked, are you going to be testing? And these other guys, they either said yeah or no, right? I mean, you get a binary one. Gunnar Helm was the only guy of the tight end group that did not give us a binary answer. And he said something to the effect of, we'll see how I feel. It was like something like that. It was a weird response. And looking over his testing, he should not have tested. This is not great for Gunnar Helm, and I'm curious. I just saw his 40. I'm just processing this right now. I'm curious what was going through his head when he was up at the podium when he got asked that question. Like, was this really? Think about it as his agent, right? Where you are directly financially tied to how high or low Gunnar Helm is going to go. You think you come in here and just be like, oh, just make the call that day? You wouldn't do that. right? You would know the testing that he has done in the pre-draft testing, and you would know whether that's going to have his stock go up or down. It's obviously going down today. If I was his agent, I would have advised him, knowing if these were going to be the numbers. Or was he not feeling good today? And he usually tests a little bit better than this, but he gave it a go anyway. That would be weird too. I have to be honest, I'm a bit confused. This Gunnar Helm is a solid player. On the field this past year for Texas, he was better overall than Jatavian Sanders. Jatavian Sanders was the one-trick pony the year before, just the receiving. Gunnar Helm, you got a legitimate inline player as well, and someone that could block, who gave Texas a real intermediate type efficiency guy as a tight end. There are limitations. You know, he just ran the horrific 40. He's not a downfield guy, but he is a guy that can make plays in the intermediate range. He's another guy, get to the spot 6 yards up. You know, you're going to cut out. He's going to stay on time with the concepts. That's why Quinn Ewers loved him. Quinn Ewers loves going down his script and staying on time with the concept. He got that with Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm, my man, you should not have tested. And I see they just adjusted one of the times to 4.84.
Yeah.
Even
his first attempt, 4.93. First attempt was a 4.9340. Then the second attempt, 4.84. And like you said, he has a good catch radius. Like you said, he's got really good ball skills. But I don't know, Thor, you can't look at those numbers. Tell, unfortunately, a little bit of a different story, which is unfortunate.
It's super duper. Again, I'm confused why the kid tested. Yeah. He seemed, I don't know where his head was at yesterday, and now I don't know where it was at today. And by the way, I mean, you have good height there, you know, at 6'5". He has big hands as well. It's a fine wingspan, you know, a fine frame. He only weighs 241 pounds, right? Like, that's what he weighed in at. He was listed higher than that at Texas. It seems as though, you know, you might have tried to get to the lower weight to run better, and then you get these two sloth-like 40s. Right. So how is his NFL? You have to project that kid as a starter, right? Like if he's going to go as high as he was being potentially talked about before, you know, one of the top 5 or 6 consensus tight ends. Terrence Ferguson from Oregon is having himself a really good day today. I think you're seeing a flip there. I had Ferguson higher in my rankings than Helm heading into today. I think you're going to see that on most of the boards coming out of this week. And Gunnar Helm, out of those top 6 tight ends, I think he is soundly out of that group right now. And teams might come out of this thinking of him more as a backup tight end, you know, and a developmental guy, but he's on the older side as well. So, just kind of a confusing showing for Gunnar Helm these last couple of days.
Yeah, unfortunate to say the least. Let's say that about Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas. Let's go over, you mentioned Terrence Ferguson. So let's go over to Terrence Ferguson and talk about him, tight end out of Oregon. Really, the question is now, like you just mentioned, is his stock up? He's coming in 4.63. I believe that's currently the fastest 40 time out of these tight ends right now. Vertical first among tight ends, broad jump sitting there third among tight ends as well. So he's having himself a day.
Look at Terrence Ferguson. Yeah, it's stock up, you know, and again, like one dude's stock goes down by definition, someone else is going to go up, right? Like only the 250 and change are going to get drafted and the hierarchy here. And as far as the tight ends go, it's important because anyone in that top 6 is you're assuredly going to go on day 2, right? Or you're going to go by the end of day 2, and a series of those guys, most of those guys, it's going to be round 2, the ones that aren't going in the first round. I think Ferguson, now you are solidly in that top 6, you know, what I expect to be a consensus top 6 coming out of this event. This is a guy who has a well-rounded game. Terrence Ferguson came in here almost 6'5.5". 247 pounds, a little bit smaller hands, but he does have an above average wingspan. He's above 80 on that. And it's a guy that does blocking, as you know, you can block on the inline as well as the receiving element. We got to see that with Dylan Gabriel this past season. He ended up having 65 targets, 43 receptions. But I like Terrence Ferguson's game. I was curious about the athleticism. This was a guy who came into this season, the 2 different scouting services from the NFL. One of them had a round 4 grade on Ferguson. The other one had a round 5 to 7. He improved his stock during the fall and then at the beginning of the pre-draft process. This is another help here. Has Terrence Ferguson gotten himself to the back end of the second round? or is he going to go in round 3? I think that's probably the question. Now, I'd probably lean towards round 3, early round 3 on that, but I think with the showing here, he has given himself a shot at round 2.
I liked his interviews too that you guys were talking about. He said that, he considers himself really versatile. One of his quotes was that he is a fluid athlete in the middle of the field. Talked about, of course he got the Denver Broncos Joker question. So he was like, it's something that he'd love to do, be able to own the middle of the field and be that athlete. So feels like everything for him is, like you just said, unfortunately, stock up for him. Gunnar Helm, maybe a little bit of an opposite thing going on.
Yeah, that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, Ferguson, he had a couple of concentration drops last year that I'm not going to hold against him. And again, that versatility he talked about was for real. We talked about numerous guys here already that you categorically could never line up for one snap in line in the NFL. Terrence Ferguson is not one of those guys. This is a guy that you can play in line. You can also shift him out into the slot. So you have that versatility there with him. And man, that the athletic testing today is going to open eyes for Terrence Ferguson. That was better than he was expected to test. So big time stock up. And again, you have now moved yourself into the middle of that day 2. You're right on that line of round 2, round 3. Very good day for Terrence Ferguson.
Let's finish things out here with the tight end talk. Mitchell Evans, tight end out of Notre Dame. When you look at his stats, I'm seeing 4.74 40, which is 7th right now among those tight ends. Vertical sitting second to last among tight ends, and then 11th in the broad jump among those tight ends as well. So what have you seen from Mitchell Evans?
I think it was a fine showing by Mitchell Evans. This is a guy who was nicked up in college. When he was on the field, he was a good player. And he came in here and he's one of the biggest tight ends here, 6'5.5", 258 pounds. So you keep that context in mind with some of these testing, some of his testing numbers. But this is a guy who brings his lunch pail as an inline tight end blocking. And you get the intermediate stuff with him as a receiver. You're not going to send him out further than that, Mitchell Evans. And Riley Leonard couldn't throw further than that, even if we want. Sorry, Riley. But no, Mitchell Evans, you will get that sort of utility. Just don't stretch him too far down the field. You'll get the blocker and you'll get the receiving out to the intermediate area.
What's the Notre Dame streak for tight ends at the draft? How far back does that go? I don't even want to say it out loud.
It's almost as long as my streak of going to St. Elmo's at combine trips.
I love it. All right, Thor, before we get out of here, kind of want some rapid fire gut reactions on not only what you've seen here, but maybe guys that you're looking for or looking forward to, or someone that you believe stock is up, however you want to go with it, but just guys you're looking forward to, and then maybe some other guys that have helped their draft stock as well.
Well, we didn't give any love to the defensive backs, and since they tested today, I got to shout out my boy Maxwell Harrison. He was 24-1 heading into this event to have the fastest 40 time, and I believe he is in pole position right now with the 4.28. He's the only guy here that has broken 4.3 so far. Now tomorrow, as I called it, we got showstopper day here in Indianapolis. That is the skill players are testing. We got quarterbacks and then the running backs and the receivers. There are a couple guys who not only believe that they will beat Maxwell Harrison's time, but who are promising to beat Xavier Worthy's time. And a couple former Texas Longhorns, interestingly enough, we have some parallels there. They were both talking today about how they are anticipating breaking Worthy's record. So, and I'm talking about Isaiah Bond and then Jaden Blue. Both those guys are just absolute burners, and they were like one-upping each other as far as their proclamations. One of them was, I'm going to break the record. The other one is like, I'm going to run in the 4.1s. And it's like, okay, we'll end up seeing. But again, I got to shout out Maxwell Harrison. He was 15-1 to even be the fastest defensive back. And he ended up edging out Darian Porter for that, the Iowa State cornerback. Big time stock up for Maxwell Harrison. That's a guy who he's a little bit smaller for a boundary corner, but he had already measured in with the length. He certainly had the movement. He's a sticky cover guy, and the speed was apparent on tape. Mike Renner had a tweet today that I very much agreed with, that he was the only guy who tracked down Isaiah Bond in college. Interesting thinking about tomorrow. One of the 2 or 3 guys that could potentially run faster than Hairston is the one dude who tracked him down, or was tracked down by. So it's going to be interesting to watch that play out. But Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky cornerback, now has a shot to go at the end of the first round.
I love it. And we're going to be back tomorrow, Thor. We're not going to leave anyone hanging. We're going to be back doing these recaps here and kind of going through everything that you've seen. Again, everyone, thank you so much for listening to us. Make sure you're following at ThorKU over there on Twitter and get the outfit, the new era. Thor, I'm going to make a call tonight. I want that.
I'm going to run the authority.
I love it. I love it. Everyone, as always, appreciate you hanging out with us on this Friday night. Give Thor a follow. Give me a follow at KValenzuela17. And make sure you go to fantasylife.com, subscribe to that newsletter, and get some of those updates in our articles 100% free. We'll see you tomorrow.